What's up, boxing fans? This is TBE Boxing, back at you again. Today's topic: Crawford KO'd Derrick James' desperate attempt at pushing false media narrative about Undisputed. Let's chop it up and see what it's all about.
Got the money for minutes, pretty bitch, gotta show me titties. This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? That life for riches, huh? That life for riches, huh? Pretty bitch, show me titties, huh? And I got the glazzy run up on me, I'ma make you get it. I'ma make you get it.
What's up, boxing fans? Let's talk some boxing. So it looks like Iceman Bud Crawford has drawn first blood in the battle against Errol Spence and his team. Uh, we're gonna go straight to the videotape. We're not gonna waste any time. Let's take a look at what happened.
But we heard why you're gonna win. I think we want to hear from you. What is a victory, though, on the 29th mean to you specifically? We know it comes as being undisputed. That would also mean you'd be the first fighter to be undisputed in two different weight classes. What would a victory on the 29th mean to you?
Well, like I said, that piggybacks on what I said before. It shows that I'm the greatest fighter of this era. No man have captured undisputed in two different weight classes.
Teofimo did last week.
Teofimo definitely wasn't. He was lineal, correction, but he wasn't undisputed. Sorry, Derek. Sorry, Derek. I'm trying. But yes.
Okay, so there you go. You heard it yourself. Derek James tried to push a false media narrative about Teofimo being undisputed at 140 pounds. And you notice the announcer, said that a PBC announcer, he made the point that Terence Crawford would become the first two-time undisputed champion. And then, Crawford, you know, basically piggybacked on that and was explaining, what was going on. And then Derek James, nobody asked him. He just jumped in there with his 2 cents, tried to push a false narrative, and he got slapped down by Bud Crawford, as you all saw for yourself. And, you notice that Derek James didn't have a response. He couldn't respond because, that was a knockout blow. Terence Crawford knocked him out right there and then. And he couldn't respond because he could say because Terence Crawford was correct. Okay, just like how the announcer was correct in announcing it. So yeah, that's what happened. And so I guess you can say that Crawford, is already drawing first blood. He took out Derek James with one punch, a knockout blow. So that's one for Crawford, zero for the Spence team. One for Team Crawford, zero for Spence team. So yeah, I don't know if you have noticed that over the years, Derek James has been one of the main proponents in trying to make sure this fight never happened between Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. He has said on more than one occasion that Errol Spence's legacy doesn't depend on fighting Terence Crawford, and that he doesn't even have to fight Terence Crawford. So it is what it is. But you can see that at the end of the day, I think you know now we have to understand Derek James knows boxing, right? So why would he say something like that when he knows better? Okay, that's the question I wanna ask. I mean, why would he say that and he knows better? I mean, Derek James knows boxing. Okay, he knows that Teofimo is not two-time undisputed. Teofimo is not even one-time undisputed because he was never undisputed at 135 pounds. He had that third belt, which was the French fries belt, which they call a franchise, but we call it the French fries belt. That's the belt that Teofimo had at 135 pounds with other three belts. He had the WBA, the IBF, and the WBO belt, but he never had the WBC belt because that belt was dropped by uh, Lomachenko, when Devin Haney became his mandatory, instead of fighting Devin Haney, he just dropped the belt. Okay, and so when he fought uh, Teofimo, he didn't have that third belt. That belt was, in Devin Haney's hands, and in order for Teofimo to become undisputed, he would have to fight Devin Haney, which he never did. Even though Top Rank wanted him to make that fight, he did a cherry picking move and picked Cambosos, and we all know what happened. The rest is history. Cambosos stopped him. Cambosos decisioned him, and took the belt from him, and that was it for Teofimo. So, the fact that Derek James would try to push that little narrative about Teofimo being undisputed when he knows better. Again, Teofimo beat Josh Taylor, and like Crawford said, by beating Josh Taylor, he became the lineal champ. But he wasn't Josh Taylor wasn't undisputed because he had dropped, the belts and only kept one. So the belts is what determine your undisputed status. So if you don't have the belt when you fight an opponent, then you can't be undisputed. You got Regis Prograis up there with one belt. You got other fighters up there with the other belts. So Josh Taylor is not undisputed. And so when Teofimo beat him, Teofimo never became undisputed because Josh Taylor wasn't undisputed. So those are the facts. I mean, regardless of what Teofimo wants to go around, spinning narratives about him being, undisputed. If you check the record books, you'll know that Teofimo's name is not in there as undisputed, whether at lightweight or whether at junior welterweight. No matter what anybody out there is saying, okay, those are the facts. Whether it's, I don't care who's saying that he's undisputed, whether it's Roy Jones, whether it's Max White, Hope Kellerman, or whether it's Derek Running Man James, okay. None of them are talking facts because the fact is that, as Terence Crawford correctly stated, Teofimo is lineal champ and he's not undisputed. And, it's two different things. And those are the facts. So we saw that, that was a desperate attempt by Derek James because, one thing I realized that Derek James doesn't like to give Crawford any accolades, for his accomplishment. He's always, as a matter of fact, he stated that Danny Garcia had a better record than Terence Crawford. Never mind the fact that Danny Garcia, he called Danny Garcia a superstar. Danny Garcia was a superstar compared to Terence Crawford. Never mind the fact that Danny Garcia never won a fight at welterweight. Okay, all the fight he fought at welterweight he lost. While at the same time, every fight that Terence Crawford had at welterweight, he knocked out his opponent. Okay, so that's so these are the kind of false narrative that Derek James is spinning, in a desperate attempt to try to make his fighter, Errol Spence, you know, come up to the level of where Crawford is. But he can't come to the level because Crawford is a he's a three-weight champion who was undisputed at 140 pounds. So, when you look at their records, one fighter in Errol Spence who barely fights and, had, fights, once every 3 years approximately. And then you have another fighter who has never missed a mandatory, who has defended his belt numerous times, who has moved up, three different weight division, and in his last move up, he's been knocking out all his opponents in the weight division. So you see, there's no comparison when it comes to, record. All this talk about, you know, uh, all this talk about like Errol Spence jumped in. If you should go and watch that interview after what Crawford said. Errol Spence jumped in and was talking about, oh, Crawford ain't fought nobody, this, that, and the other. Yeah, more false narrative from the Errol Spence team, at the end of the day. So, they're basically trying to diminish, Crawford's record. I mean, I don't see what difference it makes now. The fight is on, and it doesn't make a difference what they say. The fights are going to go forward. So, what difference does it make, what Crawford's record looks like now? I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to have to fight Crawford. So, all of that doesn't really make a difference at this point. But people love to spin narratives, and they're still spinning these media narratives as they've been spinning throughout the last 4 years. When Crawford has been trying to get these guys in the ring in the welterweight division, whether it's Keith Thurman, uh, Spence, Danny Garcia, or any of those guys. So again, Danny Garcia moved up to welterweight from 140 pounds. He was a great fighter at 140 pounds, but when he came to welterweight, he didn't accomplish much. Okay, and so there's no way you can compare his record to that of Terence Crawford at the end of the day. But as we see, Derek James, has done that on more than one occasion, trying to compare, these guys' records to Terence Crawford's record, and there's really no comparison. And Derek James knows that. But I think that what's going on with Derek James, I don't think he wants his guy to face Crawford. He never did, okay, and he never, you know, tried to push for that fight. He's always been reticent, to take the fight with Crawford. I'm pretty sure he probably was advised. He probably advised Spence against taking this fight with Crawford. I'm pretty sure of that. Okay, but as we know, Spence himself said that people were trying to get him not to take the fight, but he stuck to his gun. They wanted him to fight Shawn Porter. I mean, not Shawn Porter, Keith Thurman, but he sat out instead of fighting Keith Thurman, and because he wanted to make this fight with Crawford happen. And so we give him a little credit for that, even though the reason he's doing that is because of pressure from the fans. Basically, he had been basically avoiding Crawford for years, and the fans, finally forced him to take notice. After Crawford's been calling him out for years, and now the fight is going to happen, and so all the narratives and the spin that's been going on, all that's going to come to an end on July 29th, and so can't wait to see the fight. It should be a great one, and I'm going to do some more analysis about who's going to win the fight as the fight get a little bit closer. But for right now, we're just talking about the build-up. And so in this build-up, we saw what Derek James said, and we saw what Crawford said. And like I said, we can score one for the team Crawford and zero for Errol Spence at this point. So Crawford is up by one right now. And at the end of the day, we're gonna have to wait and see how this build-up all plays out to see who scored the next point. Okay, so yeah, Derek James spinning narratives, trying to comfort his fighter, Errol Spence, because every time uh, people talk about Crawford, it looks like Team Spence gets highly irritated. When especially when people start mentioning all the accolades that Crawford has, first man to become undisputed in the welterweight division in the four belt era. You know, uh, moving up three different weight divisions, knocking out every opponent in the welterweight. If he wins this fight with Errol Spence, which I think he will, he'll become the first man, as he stated, to become two-time undisputed. And so these type of things seem to get, uh, you know, Derek James and Errol Spence, triggered. They get triggered anytime people mention Errol Spence, Terence Crawford's accolade. And I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I guess in a way, it's a type of jealousy, I would think, because how can you say that Terrence Squad ain't fought nobody, but this fight is going to be the greatest fight uh, uh, since Hearns and Sugar Ray Leonard. If you're going to say that, then that means these are two top fighters. That on one hand they're saying that these are uh, Crawford is a great fighter, but he ain't fought nobody. So I mean, it doesn't make any sense what Team Spence is saying. They contradicting themselves every time they open their mouth. Okay, and we all know why at the end of the day. Okay, I think they're a little bit jealous and about the accomplishments of Terence Crawford, and they're just trying to spin, put out spin out there. To cover up their well, I guess what you call it, their I don't know what to call it actually. It's not I don't it's not jealousy, but I guess it's inferiority complex. When it comes to the accomplishments of Crawford, as opposed to the accomplishments of Errol Spence. Like I said, one guy who doesn't fight very often, doesn't defend his mandatories. Then you have the other guy who fights regularly and defends his mandatories, and has never ducked a mandatory or not fought his mandatory. So I mean, it is what it is. And so, Derek James can talk all he wants, but he can't erase the facts. And those are the facts. So with that said, I'm gonna leave this here. Uh, make sure you're tuning in for the fish fry on July 29th, 2023. It's gonna be delicious. Again, people, with that said, I'm gonna leave it there. This is TBE Boxing saying I'm out.
Got them out of a minute, pretty bitch, gotta show me titties. This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? That life before riches, huh? That life before riches, huh? Pretty bitch, show me titties, huh? And I got the glazy run up on me, I'ma make you get it. I'ma make you get it.